Hey, welcome everyone. This is my first AP biology video. So I'm going to use a resource from my webpage, Biology by Bradford. I'm Adam Bradford or Mr. Bradford to my students, and you can find my interactive lessons here. So under resources, interactive lessons, and you can toggle between IB and AP for the brave few that do both. So we'll just start with water and elements of life. If this is something you want to share with a friend, you've got a little share function here. You can download it and use it yourself offline. It's what's called a HTML file. So it's like a web page that works offline. In the very first part of AP, we think about water and elements of life. And the elements of life, the building blocks of our biological molecules. We'll start with water. We all know that most of our body is comprised of water, and it's the most important, arguably the most important molecule on Earth. Without it, there wouldn't be life. So when we look at a water molecule, and we're comparing it to methane here. Now, why are we doing that? Well, they've got a similar relative atomic mass. So if we look at the oxygen here and the hydrogens, you can see that there is this um, bond. We don't really need to appreciate that this is 104.5 bent, but it's this idea that we've got like a dipole. So a linear molecule would cancel its dipoles, a bent one cannot. So that means if this other hydrogen was over here, there would be like a cancellation of it. It would have that positive charge on either side, and it would distribute the charge. Whereas with water, there isn't this distribution of charge. There's a distribution here because oxygen and carbon have a greater electronegativity than hydrogen does. So most of the time, you're going to find those electrons closer to the nucleus of oxygen and of carbon. However, because of they have equal bonds here, then they're canceling out any difference in charge across the molecule. Whereas with water here, this like 104.5, this bent angle that we have here, means that we end up having these two positive poles and a negative pole. And we should know that a hydrogen molecule is one proton, one electron. If that proton is left on its own, that's in the nucleus, and the electron normally finds itself here around the oxygen's nucleus, well, then we're ending up with a slight positive charge. And because there's now more electrons than what can be cancelled out by the protons, we have a slight negative charge here. Now, what does that mean? It means we have a permanent dipole that allows for hydrogen bonding. So here is an example of a hydrogen bond. It takes place between one of the hydrogens of a water molecule and the oxygen of another one. Now, of course, you're probably thinking this hydrogen can also form a hydrogen bond with another oxygen, and you're right, it can. For simplicity's sake, in this diagram here, we just have one. Now, this is what we call a weak intermolecular bond. It's stronger than London dispersion forces. It's not as strong as like an ionic bond, but it has a measurable effect. And that measurable effect means that we can see some properties that's specific to water. You don't find these properties in methane. We all know methane is found as a gas. That's why you're able to light your farts on fire, because it's a component, like it's the major component of farting is methane gas. It's flammable at room temperature. It's going to be found as a gas state, whereas at room temperature, water is found as a liquid, and that's due to hydrogen bonding. That gives us some unique properties like cohesion. Think of it as sticking to each other. So each one of the here is a water molecule. Of course, they don't stay uniform like this. It's just not the best animation, I suppose. But what this animation is trying to show, which it does do quite nicely, is that they're all moving and that it can create cohesion, which can also relate to something called surface tension. So here's the leg of an insect walking on the water, like what we'd call a pond skater in England. I can't remember the American name for them right now. It also means we have something called adhesion. Adhesion is sticking to something. It's why we end up with a meniscus. Now, this is obviously an inverse of a meniscus. This is showing capillary action. And it's adhering to the side here. Now, we can see there's a difference. So this is so adhesion is an attraction between water and a different polar surface, such as cellulose in a cell wall or a glass tube. Adhesion drags water up the walls. Cohesion drags the rest of the column along behind it. The narrower the bore or the lumen, like if this tube, if it was an organic organism, we'd call it a lumen. Like in the xylem is a lumen, inside a blood vessel is a lumen, that opening. The higher the climb, which is why capillary action moves water through soil and through the finest of xylems. The fastest, of course. So adhesion, also thinking like flicking water on a window and it sticks. That's adhesion. Now, specific heat, and you might have heard of specific heat capacity. It's the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of something by 1 degree centigrade and in kilojoules. Now, water requires a lot more energy to cause a change in temperature. And it's why it takes longer for lakes to warm up in the summer, but also they retain this heat. And that's why if you go swimming in a lake in September, it's probably still quite warm, especially warmer than what it would have been in the summer. And that's because it retains the heat. So it has a high specific heat capacity. So it takes a lot of energy to change its temperature, whether that's up or whether that's down as well. And then it has a unique solvent property. So we mentioned ionic bonding before. So sodium chloride is table salt, and it is an ionic bond. Sodium is a metal, and chlorine is a non-metal. So an ionic bond is between a metal and a non-metal. And the reason why they dissolve is because of the polar properties of water. Now, the sodium is attracted to the negative oxygen, and it's more attracted to that than it is to the chlorine. And the chlorine is attracted to the positive hydrogen, so it will separate them. Whereas, you can think there's like nothing to grip when it comes to an oil, a non-polar substance, and therefore you won't see salt dissolving. You also will see, like oil will float on top of water because it's less dense and it's non-polar, so it actually repels. It's what we call hydrophobic because there's no charge within it. So it's like nothing to grip on, it's repelling. And ice floats. Why does it float? Well, in a liquid state, you'll see the water molecules will move around and the distance between the hydrogen bonds is different and the hydrogen bonds will come and go. This is not the best animation here. Like, it would be nice if these faded in and out. But what's always good about a slightly subpar animation is that we can critically analyze it like that. But here, with ice, it will start forming uniform hydrogen bonds, and that creates and opens up space. And it's only slightly less dense, but it's enough for it to float. And when it floats on water, it's also going to add a layer of insulation, which means that underneath we have some warm water, which creates a habitat in which fish could survive. So if we move on to think about the different elements. So we have 6 elements that are found in biological molecules, and there are 3 that are recurring. So you might hear your biology teacher say cho, chon, chomp, and that's in reference to CHO, CHO, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen for carbohydrates, CHO for lipids, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, CHON for proteins, so we add in the nitrogen, and CHOMP for nucleic acids. We're adding in phosphate here. So these are always present. Now, when I write this out, I put some brackets because you also need phosphates in lipids for phospholipids, which make up this like biological membranes, cell membranes. So without them, without phosphate, that lipid wouldn't be able to form. And the same for proteins. We have an S in brackets. Some R groups, and we'll come on to what an R group is. It's the functional group of an amino acid. Some amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins, the monomers, they have sulfur in them, but not all of them. So these are essential elements. There's 6 of them, and 3 of them, CHO, we need for all 4 biological molecules, but there's a couple that we'll put into brackets here as well. Now, how does this all fit together? Because we're not going to dive into each one of these biological molecules yet. We'll do that in a later video for each one of these. We'll look at them in more detail. But when we think about how it fits together, well, macromolecules and also have hydrogen bonds. When we come to look at DNA, you'll see that, and if you click on here, if I click on a macromolecule, it tells us this pink line here that I've put in. That's because in macromolecules like DNA, the two strands are held together by hydrogen bonding. We have also hydrogen bonding and how proteins fold up. So between the adjacent amine and carboxyl groups, don't worry if you don't know what that means yet, you'll find hydrogen bonding, and whether or not it's a secondary beta pleated sheet or a secondary alpha helix. So to test yourself at the end of this interactive lesson, there is a fill in the gaps, see how well you've been listening, and some multiple choice questions. So we'll just do one together, and then I'm going to show you a couple of other resources for you that you can help level up your AP game. So a student heats 100 grams of water and 100 grams of cooking oil with the identical heaters for the same time. The oil's temperature rises more than twice as much. Which statement best explains it? So pause if you want and think about it. And I'm just going to go in with energy entering water first breaks hydrogen bonds. Now, if I was to click the wrong answer, like we'll just click a random on the next one, which was correct. Now we go. You'll get some feedback too. So you'll get an explanation and it will tell you if it's correct or incorrect and a little bit of feedback. So two other resources that I have for you that are completely free is my space repetition app. Now, there's a little Tamagotchi style mascot that you have to keep alive. You can name it if you play around with the settings. There's a daily puzzles like Hangman and Helix, which is my knockoff of Wordle. But the cool thing for AP, which I really like, I've got this for IB too, but with AP, I've got a set of application cards. So I use spaced repetition to learn French. I'm still not great at French, but it really works for me. And that's why I made this. Now you can see an overview of all the cards here. This is just definitions. And the idea is that I will self-assess, boom, boom, boom. And you have an adaptive algorithm, and it's different for everyone. There's a central database of information. I've got like 1,000 students using it for IB and AP at the moment. And there's lots of little functionalities like changing the font, starring cards so you see them on the front screen. So this is an app that I've built in conjunction with my own students. So it's been battle tested, and I've been given feedback and all of these kind of things, like little quality of life stuff, like one student asked for this starring function so he could see those cards again. And the other thing I've got is some practice tests. Now, everyone loves tests, so the more practice, the better. So if you go to resources, multiple choice quizzes, and under AP, chemistry of life, you can have a go at another quiz here that is different to the one that you looked at before. So I hope this has been helpful. This is the first in my AP series, and I'm going to be dropping these regularly. So please like, subscribe, and share with any friends. Ciao for now.